Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. For those who are new to Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, we are all about bringing science, adventure, exploration, and conservation live into classrooms across North America and beyond. So whether you are back in the classroom, whether you're joining us distance ed, this is the spot to come for 30, 40, even 50 live events a month with really cool scientists and explorers from all over the place. So I'm really excited for today's event. Today, we are taking a little virtual field trip to the banks of the Ogooue River in Gabon in Africa. We are joining one of my favorite explorers, Joe Cutler. Joe is an ichthyologist, studies fish. He is starting an incredible 6-month-plus megatransect of the Ogooue River, something that hasn't been done for over 100 years, sampling freshwater fish biodiversity. He is your guy if you want to know something about freshwater fish species in Central Africa. Joe, it's so great to have you joining us live today. We're so excited to get to know you a little bit better and check out the river.
Yeah, it's really great to be here. It's awesome to be able to connect from the Ogooue River. It's a river that's really poorly known, but as you can see, it's quite a substantial river, and there's a lot more to discover out here. So I'm really happy to have the opportunity to kind of share this experience with you all and join you all from the field.
All right, excellent. Well, Joe, tell us a little bit more to get us started about where you are today. Where are you in Gabon? What's going on around you? Tell us a little bit about where you are.
So I'm in the town of Lasterville, which is kind of on the southeastern side of Gabon. I'm just about 1 degree south of the equator. And as you can see, there's a lot of rain clouds behind me, but hopefully it won't rain during our call. But I'm on the left bank of the Ogooue River, and you can kind of see across here behind me. Well, this is a down tree here. It's not the bank, but it's a big river. I mean, it's probably at least 300 meters across at this point, and it hasn't even gotten its 2 biggest tributaries yet. So by the time this river reaches the coast, it's actually larger than the Nile, making it the 4th largest river in all of Africa. And as you mentioned, Joe, it's really poorly studied, poorly surveyed. The last major expedition on the Ogooué was conducted by Pierre Savignon de Brazza 140 years ago. So I feel really lucky to have the opportunity to get to explore such a unique, pristine, and wild river. There aren't very many wild rivers like this that remain. So it's really critically important that we study it so that we can protect it for future generations to come. So as you said, we're launching this project that we're calling the Ogooue megatransect. So we started on the eastern side of Gabon, and we're slowly rafting across the country on the Ogooue River. In total, we're going to traverse about 1,000 kilometers, 750 miles, and we're surveying the river as we go. And at certain particular sites of interest. The Ogooué is very pristine right now, but there are 14 proposed dams on the main stem of the Ogooué. And if all those dams are constructed, we're going to lose a ton of biodiversity here. So one of our objectives on this expedition is to sample these proposed dam sites, get critical baseline data so that we can really push for the conservation and protection of a wild river like the Ogooué. So we get to be the first team to sample a lot of really cool spots. We've been sleeping on beautiful sandbanks and islands in the Ogooué. The last couple days, we've been here in Lasterville. This is the first town we've encountered on the Ogooué. And we're doing some resupplying, charging our electronics, and getting in contact with folks like you all. So thus far, basically, we've seen a couple small fishing villages along the Ogooué, but outside of that, basically no human impact. So it's been really wild, really awesome. We've seen so many groups of monkeys jumping through the trees, elephant tracks coming right down to the water's edge, and tons of awesome fish. I didn't catch it, but I saw a fish that had to be a meter, 3 or 4 feet long, and it just burst on the surface right behind our boat. So, man, there's a lot to discover out here. And, the fishing communities have been talking about fish that are 100 kilos, which is about 220 pounds, both catfishes and what I assume is either a snapper or a Nile perch, the carp géant that they've been talking about. So, man, I'm really excited to be out here, get to explore the fish diversity, and paddle down a river for the first time in 140 years. We really don't know what we're going to discover, but it's amazing that there are still places that are so poorly explored, like the Ogooué, that you can go out and find a bunch of new stuff that we had no idea existed.
Absolutely. Joe, it sounds incredible. When we had our test call the other day, I was pretty jealous. It looked like you were having a great time fishing, sampling from the river. I do want to encourage those who are tuning in via Facebook and YouTube to use the chat sidebars and send us in some questions and comments as we connect today. We already have one comment that came in on Facebook saying dream job. So I think there's a lot of people who are jealous about what you'll be doing over the next, you think about 6 months?
Yeah, we're actually paddling a little bit faster than I thought. So we don't have we don't know how long it's going to take, but thus far we've actually covered, maybe even like a sixth or a seventh of the Ogooué. So we're moving pretty quickly. The rains are approaching. The rainy season is going to start in about 45 days or so, and the water level is going to rise. Actually, where I am right now was underwater last year, if you can believe it. So, I'm probably 5 meters above where the water is right now. And the water gets at least to here and actually even higher than that. This big, huge tree behind me fell last year when I was here in Lasterville doing some preparation for this trip. So the river is going to change really quickly when it starts raining. The water level is going to rise. All the islands are going to flood, and the water is going to start going faster and faster. And the rapids that we're expecting to paddle through are going to get even more dangerous and more worrisome. Thus far, it's been good. We've had 3 really significant rapids. I've been able to run all of them in our raft without issue, but the biggest rapids are soon to come. And basically, I don't know if you can see downstream, there's a bridge over here. Just after that bridge, the river splits and there's a bunch of islands and a bunch of rapids. And we don't really have very good notes, or nobody's ever rafted it in a boat. So we don't really know what the rapids are going to look like. And I know that at least one of them is going to be really huge. And we may choose to walk around that one because I think that's a little bit too risky given how far we are from hospitals and healthcare here.
All right. Well, I think that's an important thing to highlight about expeditions is, yeah, you're doing something exciting and unknown, but safety, especially in such a remote area, is of the utmost importance. So it may not be as cool to walk around it, but if it's safer, then that's definitely the best course to take.
Yeah. That rapid, it seems like there's probably about a 15-foot waterfall on the main channel where the whole Ogooue River shoots off this waterfall. And then it's not a short rapid, it's a long rapid. So if you flip early, you're going to be turned around and crushed onto the rocks. And we've got a lot of fragile gear in our raft. We've got the drone, we've got a generator, we've got our cell phones and computers for backing up all of our media. And I don't want to flip my raft if I can avoid it.
Yes, definitely. So we got a few more comments coming here via our social media feeds. We've got Jeff, who's joining us. He's looking on Google Earth where you are, and he says, wow, so remote. What a great adventure. And then a couple questions here for you, Joe. The first one is, where you are right now, what would you estimate that the depth of the river is? And then can you tell us a little bit about the team you have with you?
So the river actually is not very deep here. It's probably only, in the center. Actually, I don't know if I can point them out. Just beyond this tree, you can kind of see this here. Those are actually rocks sticking out in the middle of the river. So, right down there, it's 0 feet deep. Out here behind me, it's probably in the 10 to 15 feet deep range. And what's interesting is as we're paddling downriver, there are times where you can tell that the watercolor is changing, and that's because you're getting into a shallow area where the sand is literally right under the surface of the water. So in the middle of the dry season, which is where we are right now, though there are lots of beautiful sand spits and islands that come out, and they make for really nice places to camp, but it makes navigation a little bit more treacherous. In the rainy season, the waters go way up higher, and I know that at least at one point in the Ogooué, just downstream of Lope, it's about 60 meters deep, which is 180 feet deep. So there are areas where it's going to be a lot deeper than it is here, and I really hope that I have the opportunity to do some fishing in those deep holes to see what kind of monsters we can pull out of there.
Very cool, Joe. So the second question that came in was about your team. Can you tell us a little bit about who's joining you for this expedition?
So for this first leg from Franceville to Lasterville, we had 3 students, master's students from the University of Science and Technology in Masuku, which is Franceville. So 3 Gabonese students working on their master's projects, and a professor at the university there who studies fish parasites. So we were actually doing a lot of extracting digestive tracts to fishes so that she could later go into the lab and look at what parasites are in the Ogooué. If you can imagine how little is known about the fish out here, there's a lot less known about the fish parasites. And then the other member of our team that we've got with us now is Megan Sixt. She's playing the role of photographer and chief communicator for the expedition. And she's actually just downstream from me throwing the cast net right now. So that we'll have some fish to show off later in the call. So we'll go and say hello to her in just a second. And in about a week, we're going to be joined by some of my colleagues from Centerest. Edouard Nzenge is going to join us in Boué. And then I think we've got a few others who are going to join us around Lope. And then the director of aquatic ecosystems for Gabon is going to join us in Njole, and maybe even the minister of forestry and wildlife for Gabon. So we have kind of a rotating team here, mostly based with Gabonese scientists, but we've got 2 Americans here who are going to do the whole trip, me and Megan.
All right. Well, we do have Edouard. He's joining us via Facebook, tuning in right now. So a big shout out to Edouard. Thank you for joining us today. And Joe, that's what has me really excited, is that, anywhere we can find this kind of connectivity, we're going to do some virtual events as you make your way down the river for classrooms. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to those.
Oh, me too. And you're going to be amazed at how much the river changes as we descend. The river here is still tiny as compared to what we're going to see as we approach the coast. I mean, after Lambaréné, there's just this huge inland delta, and you've got 200-pound tarpon that swim all the way up there. You've got giant snapper. You've got giant African threadfin. You've got tongue soles, manatees, crocodiles, hippos, freshwater turtles. There's so much out here, so much biodiversity, and I feel like we're only scratching the surface at this point. And I'm really excited. I expect that we're going to see elephants swimming across the Ogooué at some point on this expedition. We've seen so much bird diversity, so many moths, butterflies, bugs, crickets, and of course, fish. It's been just awesome. And going out with a headlamp after dark and just photographing everything that you encounter and posting it on iNaturalist has been just a joy thus far. It's been really fun. And I feel like I've discovered a lot, even though I started working in Gabon in 2014. So I'm really excited for the rest of this expedition. I think we're going to really have the opportunity to explore Gabon in depth and see how the Ogooué and how Gabon itself changes across the country.
All right. Well, Joe, you're doing an excellent job of painting a vivid picture for us of Africa's last wild river. So good job with that. It sounds absolutely amazing. I am going to bring someone in. So we have Mrs. Place joining us. She's representing some students from Miami-Dade. Let me bring her up there. Hey, Mrs. Place, how are you?
Hi, it's great to see you. It's the second day of school in Miami, Florida, and we're so excited to already be on a field trip with Cutler's Catch. We've been tweeting crazily about Explore by the Seat of the Pants and Cutler's Catch, and we're super excited to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm excited you're here too.
We have a question for you. Could we ask you a question? First of all, we were super excited to hear about manatees because we love manatees in Miami, Florida. So we were excited to hear that there's another place that has manatees. But we have a question about algae bloom. We are suffering right now from a really horrible algae bloom that killed a lot of fish in the bay. And the students were wondering, is there the possibility ever of algae bloom in the Ogooué as well?
Yeah, I think that there's a possibility of a harmful algal bloom in any aquatic ecosystem. So, usually, what happens is you have a big input of nutrients, whether this be fertilizer or natural nutrients, and the algae bloom in such abundance that when they die, they deplete the oxygen in the system. And I don't know if there are records of that on, throughout the Ogooué, but locally, there are definitely records of harmful algal blooms and fish kills here in the Ogooué, in particular in the areas where there's more intensive agriculture. So, if someone uses fertilizer in their farm and then there's a big rain and the fertilizer gets washed into the rivers, that's, I think, when we would see something like that here in the Ogooué. Now, one thing that's important to note, or another thing that happened here actually last year, there was a huge die-off of all the tilapia in the Ogooué. And this is one of the most important food fishes for Gabonese people. And no one had any idea what it was. People thought it could have been an algal bloom, but in fact, it turned out to be a virus that was really wrecking the local populations of the fishes. Thankfully, we've seen quite a few tilapia here on this expedition, so I don't think it killed everything, but it was really catastrophic, and it was just, a microscopic virus that caused all that damage. Now, what's weird is the virus is here, it's always been here, and we don't know what caused it to kind of explode last year and cause such mortalities. So I don't think that algal blooms are the number one threat to the Ogooué, but locally, I definitely think that we could see those here in the Ogooué, especially kind of in the upper Ogooué where there's more agriculture.
All right. Great question. Now I'm going to jump to another class that's joining us. We have Mrs. Brown's class joining us from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Let me get their mic turned on. How are we doing, boys and girls?
Here we go. We have to we're masking for safety. But I'm going to pull my mask down so you can see me. This is 8th grade human geography. And we have a student who wants to ask you a question. Brylan? This is Brylan.
Hey, Mr. Cutler. Our question is, how would you compare the health of the rivers in Gabon to the rivers in the U.S.?
I'm a Californian, and in all of California, there's only one river that's undammed, which means that the impacts of humans on river systems in the U.S., California is actually probably more pristine than a lot of the other states in the U.S., relatively speaking. And I think that the impacts of humans on the river systems in the United States are much more dramatic than they are here. One of the things that's amazing about Gabon is this whole country has less than 2 million inhabitants. And the Ogooué Basin has less than 4 inhabitants per square kilometer, making it one of the least densely populated river systems, large river systems in the whole world. Because of this really low human population density, impacts associated with agriculture, with fishing, with extractive industries are actually a lot smaller here in Gabon than they are throughout most of the world. I think that this river, the Ogooué, may be one of the most pristine large tropical rivers in the whole world. It certainly is more intact than any other large river in Africa. So it's a really remarkable system. It's amazing how pristine it is. And when I compare it to the rivers back home, we've lost a lot of species in our rivers at home. we've had fish extirpations in almost every river system. Here, there's not one known fish that's completely disappeared from the Ogooué. And in fact, the diversity here is probably higher than it's ever been as people continue to introduce new species. But the Ogooué, relatively speaking, when we compare it to the world's great rivers, is probably one of the most pristine. And that's one of the reasons I think it's so important to explore and start to protect the Ogooué.
Absolutely, Joe. Well, we're getting questions about your equipment. One specifically is they would love to see your boat if it's close by.
Oh, it's right down.
Perfect.
Right
and maybe
there.
a little bit about your techniques for how you're sampling the river.
Yeah, let me just turn this around and take you over that way. There are a bunch of people washing their clothes and bathing right next to our boat, so be prepared. But I'm going to turn you guys around and walk you over this way. And that's our raft. It's a 16-foot raft. It's pretty big. We've been calling it the Hippo. And it's got an oar frame. So this whole setup allows just one person to paddle the whole raft in any conditions. So we've got most of our gear up on the hill, but this is our raft. We've also got 2 pack rafts that we've been using when we've got a few more people out with us. But so far, so good. We've navigated at least 100 miles of the Ogooué without any issues. And I feel like we've got just the right boat for this type of expedition. And then the second question was about our sampling techniques. And I've got Megan over here with a cast net. And hopefully she can toss it out and catch some fish so that you guys can see, kind of what we're catching. It may be a little hard with all the activity in the water, but anyhow, there are definitely a lot of fish here, and we've got a few in the bucket that we can show off as well. So cast netting is a really cool sampling technique because you can do it literally anywhere. You can do it in the rapids, you can do it on the sandy banks, you can do it in still water, in fast water, and it's one of the best ways to catch all kinds of biodiversity. So it doesn't target specific species. So if we're only fishing, for example, with hook and line, we would only see fish. Hey, we've got something. All right, let's see what we've got. Oh, all right. Let me give it a little rinse. So that is a Brycinus longipinus, a longfin tetra. And we've put a few fish here in the bucket as well so that I can show off a little bit of what the diversity looks like here. And most of these are crassiforms. So they are in the same family as piranhas. And this one in particular is really a beauty. Oops. So I don't know if you can see that fish, but it's got these beautiful orange fins, nice kind of green-blue coloration on the flanks, and it's a nice silvery fish, and it's got pretty impressive teeth. I doubt you'll be able to see it in the video, but if I open its mouth, man, it's got some gnarly things that I wouldn't want to be bitten by. So, what's interesting when we're sampling here, we try to sample during the day and we also try to sample during the night. And we see totally different species in the same habitat during the day and during the night. We catch a lot of catfish at night. And during the day, you hardly ever see catfish. So one of the things that we were doing actually last night, there's a tiny little stream behind the house. And I went out there with this tiny little dip net. And my big bright headlamp, and I was just kind of wading through the little stream, seeing the fish sleeping, and I was able to just scoop them up and net them. And we were able to catch fish, 4 species from 3 genera and 3 families different in about 20 minutes of fishing in this tiny little stream. So what we've been using mostly for fish sampling are cast nets, seine nets, and dip nets. And that's to some degree because we've got a limit of space in the raft. If we could, we'd be fishing with electricity, and that's a really great way to see a lot of diversity out here.
All right. Well, Joe, give Megan a big shout out, a big thank you for casting. Hey, Megan, how are you?
He says, "How are you?"
All right, very cool. Well, I like your technique casting the net. That's pretty cool.
I'll tell you, she's better at throwing the cast net than I am, and I've been doing this for a while.
All right. Well, Joe, another message just came in. Lindsay Cutler says, "Hey," and they all miss you. We miss you. So it's a shout out from Lindsay.
Hey, that's family. Happy they're
right.
tuning in.
Very cool. Okay, a couple questions here. So Russell's wondering about black flies or other insects. How are they right now?
You know, the flies haven't been too bad. The biting insects haven't been too bad. There are always stinging ants, which yesterday when I was crawling around in the streams after dark, I was definitely being bit all over by little tiny stinging ants. The mosquitoes haven't been bad at all. The biting flies haven't been that bad. I've had a couple tsetse bites thus far, but I think the rainy season will bring more bugs. And that's one of the things I'm not looking forward to. I've had plenty of horrible stings and bites and parasites working in Central Africa. So I'm hoping to avoid those as much as possible. Thus far, I would say it's actually been remarkably comfortable, remarkably smooth and easy. And, you know, I was gearing up for a really hard, miserable trip. And thus far, we've been in pretty good spirits.
All right, excellent. But it sounds like there's a lot more to come. So let's visit our live groups again. Let's go back to Miami and bring this place back in.
Hi, Mr. Cutler. We're in virtual school, so that's why you only see me right now. Our students are meeting virtually all over Miami-Dade today, so we're super excited to be with you. The question came in about what you do in the evening. Do you have a set base camp and then travel each night away from there, or do you set up a camp each night as you travel down the river?
We move our camp every single night. So what we've been doing, we get up probably around 6 a.m. We eat breakfast till about 7. We're in the raft at 7:30. We've been paddling until about in between 2 and 4 p.m. And we're really conscious about finding a good place to sleep before it gets dark, because navigating a river without maps is a little bit frightening, and we definitely want to find a good place to sleep before it gets dark. So we've been finding a sandspit or an island to pull out on every evening, setting up camp. Usually we sample fish diversity from about 5 p.m. till about 7 p.m. And that's kind of the transition period from daytime to night. By 7 p.m. it is pitch black here. It's amazing how dark it gets in the forest in Gabon. And so by 7 p.m., it's totally dark. We cook a little dinner, we eat, and everybody heads into their tents for the night. So not much nightlife out on the Ogooué, but that's not the focus of the expedition. Every now and again, though, I guess the fun evening activity is putting on a headlamp and walking around and seeing what you can find. I'll tell you, the moths and the frogs have been just a treat that I didn't expect, but it's been so cool, and we've seen so much diversity already.
All right, another great question. Let's go back to Mrs. Brown's in Alabama. You're in.
What is your favorite species located in this river so far?
I'm not sure I got all of that. Can you say it again?
What is your favorite species located in this river so far?
I'm very partial to fish, so I'm going to give you a fish. My favorite species that we've encountered thus far is a species called Dumea typica, and it's this crazy little catfish that's adapted to live inside of waterfalls, and it's named after the village of Dumea. And so we were at Dumea fishing inside of the waterfall, and you know, I was throwing the cast net all evening, and only one time did I catch Dumea? And I threw it right into the waterfall, and I said, oh man, I don't know, I may lose my net right now. And the net got sucked down the waterfall, and I pulled it up on the other side, and it was full of Dumea typica. And it's such a weird looking fish. They've got these huge fins so that they can basically suck onto the bottom, and then they kind of wiggle around to move inside of the waterfalls and rapids. So I've caught those in other parts of Gabon, but I've never caught them at Dumea where they were described. So to actually have the chance to catch a fish at its point locality where it was described from was really exciting. And it's such a unique fish that, you know, even folks who aren't interested in fish would say that's a pretty cool fish. So for me, I really like the Dumea typica. The other highlight I would say for me are the African skimmers. They're these awesome birds, and they build their nests on the islands in the Ogooué, and then they fish. And they fish in a really unique way. They've got this really long, their beak is asymmetric. So the bottom part of their beak is much longer than the top part of the beak. So as they're flying low over the water, they skim the surface of the water with their lower beak. And as they hit a fish, they just snatch it up and fly off. So I've been really enjoying seeing the African skimmers and watching them fish. It's really been a joy. I'm not really a bird person, but those birds are awesome.
All right, good stuff, Joe. We've got a question coming from James, and James is wondering, are you keeping a collection? And if so, where will it be housed afterwards?
You know, given our space constraints in the raft and worries of keeping fish that are preserved in formaldehyde, we have decided to actually use iNaturalist to catalog our collection. So every time we're sampling, we're identifying every species and counting them. And then we are posting the species with their point localities on iNaturalist in the Ogooué megatransect project. So the data will be openly available and ready to be used for scientific publications and for analyses at any time. So if anybody's interested in helping us ID some of the cool species we're finding, and it's not only fish, it's including everything else that we're seeing out here. We're posting them all on iNaturalist in the Ogooué megatransect project, so that we can crowdsource the identifications and do it as quickly as possible without having to carry formaldehyde and a bunch of dead fish in our boat.
All right, so Joe, we're getting a couple questions from those tuning in, wondering how we're connecting today. So is it correct? It's a local cell phone. So we're in a spot where there's good connectivity right now.
Yeah. So here in town, we've got a pretty good connection, but from Franceville to Lasterville, the first leg that we did not see cell phone network once. So it's really amazing. I was expecting to be a little bit better connected on this expedition, but we've only had satellite service up until now. So that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to do this hangout, because I'm not sure when we're going to see another cell phone connection that's this good. It may honestly be once we're in Lope, which is, you know, another couple 100 miles downstream. So it could be another month before we have the opportunity to do another hangout. So I wanted to make the most of it today. But this is just a local cell phone connection. And you can't, the towers are actually kind of behind the camera over there. So we've got a good connection today.
All right. And that's why as well, some of the events we may do may be very short notice. We might get a day or two notice when Joe's in an area where he can connect. So hopefully we get a couple of those along the way. And for those wondering about streaming from wild places, in the past, we sent Joe out in the field with BGAN units. So they're about the size of a textbook, connect via satellite, and we'd be able to do some video calls from some pretty remote areas in the past. So check out BGAN units, BGAN, if you're looking at an expedition in remote areas. So Joe, a couple more questions here. John is wondering about the food on their trip. Is there a Gabonese specialty that is near and dear to you?
You know, there are actually a lot of really delicious meals out here. There are, one of my favorites is this dish called folone. It's kind of like a spinach-based dish, absolutely delicious. One of the things we've been doing a lot of, you know, we've got a limit of space and we have a limit of weight. And so we've been eating a lot of fufu and a lot of gari. We've been making a lot of peanut soups and eating a lot of fish out of the river as well. So pretty much every day on the river, we make some big, heavy, starchy meal with some sort of soup or sauce and fish. And I will say that yesterday we brought some like macaroni and cheese powder, some powdered cheese, and we treated ourselves to mac and cheese last night. And I'll tell you, it was so luxurious. It was so fantastic. You don't get that every day. We're really saving it for, the days where we want to splurge. But most of what we've been eating is freshwater fish, fufu, gari, some rice, some lentils, some couscous. I wouldn't say it's Michelin rated meals, but certainly good enough when you're in the field.
All right. Awesome stuff, Joe. To Mrs. Brown's class and Mrs. Place's class, if you do have another question, feel free to wave or send someone up to the camera. And I see Mrs. Place already, so here we go. Oh, she just ducked out. Maybe she'll come. Might have got excited and accidentally exited the call. Let's go. Oh, this is a great question. This came in from Beryl, and they're wondering about talking with the local community so far. How has it been, interacting? Have they been a good source of information ahead of maybe some of your sampling out on the river?
Yeah, it's been really amazing. The last two communities that we stopped in, which were Mbungubuduma and Dume, these are really river people. They're from the Aduma tribe, and the Aduma people are the famous paddlers of the Ogooué. So their number one livelihood is fishing. So these people, not only do they know every single fish in the river and how to catch them, but they know every single rapid, every single tributary, every single confluence. And so actually there's a boat going up right now, and they're headed from Lasterville back up to Dume, this boat here behind me. And this is a dugout canoe with a motor on the back, and they're using it for transport. And they are awesome navigators. So they basically, we're in town with them talking about what's coming downstream, and they're like, okay, in about 10 minutes paddling, you're going to see a big rocky band on the right. Make sure you stay left. After that, you got to turn right, and you're going to see the confluence of the Lacio. After that, just about a kilometer further, you're going to see another rocky band. You got to go in the center, otherwise you're going to flip your raft. And it's really just amazing how much they know about the river, how much their history is connected to the river. And you see these little tiny kids out in a dugout canoe paddling with a hand-carved paddle. It's just really remarkable. So our interactions have been really positive with the local communities. We've stopped in every community thus far. We've greeted the chief and the chef de regroupement and also the traditional chiefs. We've asked for their benedictions and blessings, and everybody's been really, really positive about our expedition. I think that a lot of people remember Pierre Sauvignon de Brazza's story here, and they think it's a really awesome thing that we're trying to do because it's been 140 years since someone's tried to replicate that expedition. So I think that they think we're a little crazy, but also that it's a really cool and fun idea.
All right. Well, Joe, I personally think being a little crazy is a badge of honor. So I think that's a really good compliment. I'm going to bring Mrs. Place in one more time. I think she's got another question.
Hi, we have sort of a gross question, but it's also about ecology. So the students want to know, when you go to the bathroom, do you have to take everything out with you, or do you bury it?
Here we've been burying it. And that's in part because there's just so little human presence here that, there's not the worry of a bunch of human waste accumulating at all these areas. There's probably a lot more elephant poop here in the Ogooué than there is human poop. So we've been pretty smart about it. We burn our toilet paper and whatnot, and we bury it, and we get far enough away from the river that it's not going to end up in the water. But, we've gone days without seeing a single sign of human, like nobody out there. So I don't really think, it's not a heavily frequented river like, for example, the Rogue in Oregon, where there are so many people going down every year that if you didn't pack it out, there'd be poop everywhere. Out here, there's almost no human impact, and so we've been able to just let nature do the work for us.
All right, Joe. Well, it doesn't matter if we're talking to an astronaut or an ocean rower. That's definitely a question that's always on students' minds, to know logistics behind that important daily activity. I can see we've got another student in Alabama. Let me bring them into the call. There we go.
Hey, Mr. Joe. I have a question about have y'all been catching just small species of fish, or have y'all caught
Very large.
very large? I know you said catfish.
Yeah, so most of our sampling, our scientific sampling, we're actually looking for the small stuff. Most of the fish diversity are small species, and if we were only looking for the big ones, we'd miss most of what's out there in terms of fish diversity. That said, I'm a fisherman, so I do want to catch some bigger fish. And so basically every time we've been paddling downriver, I've had 2 lines out off the back of the raft, and I've missed a couple good fish off the back of the raft. And I've been fishing also at night. And I think I've got 4 pretty substantial catfish thus far. Nothing huge, nothing monstrous, but certainly a good dinner. And as we approach the coast, the fish are only gonna get bigger and bigger. So we're still, 600 kilometers, 700 kilometers away from the ocean. There are probably no marine fishes that make it up this far. But once we get into the zone where we start seeing some marine fishes that are going up into fresh water to eat, I mean, there are bull sharks here, and bull sharks get to be several hundred pounds. There are tarpon here. There are giant African threadfin that get to be, 70, 80, 100 pounds. So I'm saving some of my fishing effort. I've got probably a dozen big surface poppers that I'm going to be using as we approach the coast in hopes of catching, some bigger fish. But a lot of what we catch and a lot of the diversity that we catch, they're fish that are this long. But a species is a species, and it's much more likely you're going to find one that's new to science that's this long than something that's, giant.
All right. Great question. So, Joe, this is a kind of built on this a little bit. Sam is tuning in. Sam's wondering about any suspected new species so far. And in that case, would you collect a voucher specimen?
I don't think we've got any new species thus far. I'm pretty sure that I personally have collected everything that we've collected in other expeditions. If we do see something interesting or weird, I'm totally going to take a specimen, and I'm going to take DNA vouchers. I don't want to miss the opportunity to describe a new species from the Ogooué. The last expedition we had sampling the main stem Ogooué, we had about 3 weeks of fish sampling. We caught 9 new species, including a new genus, a new genera of mormyrid fish. So there is definitely a lot of undescribed species out here, but you got to catch a lot more fish. So I've been keeping my eyes peeled for something that, kind of rings some bells and looks kind of unique to me. But thus far, I think everything we've collected has been, kind of common, widespread species.
All right. And then, Joe, let's hit us with how we can follow along. I know I've already been watching on Facebook. I know you have Instagram, and there's some great photos and video coming up. How can classrooms follow along?
So our main way of communicating from the field that we've been posting, we're trying to post daily on our Instagram. So our Instagram handle is @AfricasLastWildRiver. And we're also using the hashtag Ogooué megatransect. I think it's probably easier to spell Africa's Last Wild River than Ogooué megatransect. But if you find Africa's Last Wild River, you'll definitely find the hashtag as well. We've also been posting on our personal Facebook pages, and we've got a website, which is www.africaslastwildriver.com. And so we're going to be sharing everything that we post on Instagram, gets automatically uploaded onto our website. and we're putting together an interactive map where you can kind of track our daily progress down the river, see some images from each site, and we're also doing sound recordings from each site so that you can kind of experience what we're experiencing in real time.
All right. Very cool, Joe. Well, first of all, Joe, a huge thank you for taking some time out of your day to hang out with us. We had a great group of classrooms who have just started back. There's more classrooms starting back in the next couple of weeks. A huge shout out to everybody who tuned in via Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for sending in all the great questions. Joe, let's squeeze one more in from Jeff. He's wondering, what is the distance from when does the marine zone start? How far are you from the coast when the marine zone starts?
That's one of the questions I'd like to figure out, because 2 years ago, I was in Lope, which is basically smack dab right in the center of Gabon, and I caught a snapper, which is a marine fish, which means that marine fishes are swimming at least 400 kilometers up into the Ogooue River. That is it's a huge connection in between the marine and freshwater ecosystems here. When I was talking with the communities at Mbungabaduma and Dume, they were telling me about this fish, the carp géant, and I talked to all my ichthyology friends here in Gabon, and they all think it's got to be a marine fish, which means that marine fishes may actually swim, 600, 700 kilometers upstream here, which is amazing. And if the dams are built downstream, all that connectivity will be kind of destroyed. So that's one of the things that we really want to figure out. There's a lot of evidence of marine fishes around the Lambaréné area. So the entire Bas-Ogooué, the lower Ogooué, there's a huge exchange between the marine and freshwater ecosystems. But it does appear that, some of the migratory species may make it, almost all the way across the country of Gabon, which is really remarkable. And we hope to catch one further upstream so that we can validate that theory. But it seems like at least, 400, 450 kilometers of connected ecosystems between the marine and the Ogooué here, which is really remarkable.
Yeah, that's incredible, Joe. So Joe, again, a huge shout out. Thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for connecting to us today. Big shout out to Megan. Thanks for grabbing us some fish and doing some sampling. And yeah, we're excited. I know you're heading off in the next day or so with more members of your team. Good luck, and keep us in the loop when we can connect next, even if it's just a couple days notice. We're looking forward to it.
Thanks so much, Joe. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. I'm really happy to be able to share this experience because it's so cool. And I'm glad to put the Ogooué on the map. And with all you following along, I think that we'll do a better job of promoting the Ogooué, exploring the Ogooué, and making sure that it's protected for generations to come. So again, thanks for taking time out of your day and joining me here in Gabon. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
All right. Well, one more time, thanks everyone for joining us today. We're going to sign off from the banks of the Ogooué River. See you, everybody.